Okay, so you guys have given us a really interesting set of sources this time, all about this poetry collection, Under the Moon and Over the Sea, by John Agard and Grace Nichols.
Yeah.
So we are going to really dive deep into the Caribbean and how it is reflected in this book of poems. We've got your overviews, we've got your research notes, we even have a research plan for this.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot to explore.
it's a lot to explore, so let's get into it.
I think it's a really exciting one.
Yeah.
I think this is a really, really good way of kind of getting to know
Yeah.
a completely different culture, almost like a really magical trip to the islands.
Yeah, and especially if you don't have a lot of time. Like, this
Nice.
is a shortcut to being well-informed.
Yeah.
So,
But in an enjoyable way.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like reading
yeah.
a textbook or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
much more.
so it's a poetry collection. So
Yeah.
there's not really one story that is told throughout the whole book. But what our sources have really focused on is how this book kind of gives you different voices and different glimpses of life in the Caribbean, almost like you are meeting the children that live there.
Yeah.
So there was one poem that is called Guidance that I thought was a really great example.
A very relatable one as well, I think. I mean, I think we've all been there.
It was all about like a strict uncle that is always giving advice. And I just thought that was a really relatable experience.
Yeah, I love that poem because it does feel very specific,
Yeah.
you know, to the Caribbean. But at the same time, I think it's something that we can all relate to.
Yes. Yeah. And then the book also goes into these really interesting figures from Caribbean folklore.
Yeah.
And there was one called the Jumpy Man that is mentioned.
Oh, the Jumpy Man. Yeah.
And so it's really cool how they are sharing these like traditional stories and beliefs in these poems that have been like passed down through generations.
Absolutely. It's I mean, that's what folklore is all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that passing down through word of mouth
Yeah.
through the generations. And so they've captured that really well in this book.
And it makes you imagine like spooky creatures under the moonlight.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
in the Caribbean. It's that real sense of mystery and a bit of spookiness as well.
Yeah. And then there are poems about like animals that live in the Caribbean. Like there's one about dolphins.
Yes. Yeah, I love that one.
And there was one about like different kinds of fish. And I thought that was just really cool how they brought to life all of these different animals.
Yeah, and it's a celebration of
Yeah.
that incredible natural world that you find in the Caribbean, isn't it?
Yes. And then there is one poem called Windrush Child
Yes.
that a lot of our sources have really focused on. And that's all about a child's experience of traveling from the Caribbean to a new home.
Yes. A powerful one. Yeah.
Very powerful.
And then the sources talk about how in some of the poems they use personification to give human feelings to the wind or to the sea. And what did you think about that?
I thought that was really clever because what it does is it gives you this kind of, it makes that world feel more alive, I suppose.
Yeah.
It kind of brings it to life even more.
Yeah, like it gives it its own personality.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's got its own personality.
Yeah.
It can be angry. It can be calm.
Yes.
It can be all these different things.
So the book isn't just like a random assortment of poems.
No.
There is like a structure to Under the Moon and Over the Sea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's in 5 sections.
Okay.
And they are very cleverly ordered, those sections.
And so it's almost like they're different stops on a journey through the Caribbean.
Exactly.
So what are the different stops?
Well, the first one is called Caribbean as a Home Place.
Okay.
And that's all about
Yeah.
evoking that feeling of being in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And it's all about the familiar sights and sounds.
Yeah.
And the second section is called Sea, Full Moon, Here, Jumbie Story.
Oh.
So that's where you get into all the traditional stories and myths.
I like that one.
And then the third section is called Listening to the Land.
Okay.
And that's all about the nature, the landscapes, the plants, the animals.
Oh, cool.
And then you've got Come Taste and Buy,
Okay.
which is all about the delicious food and the lively markets.
I like that one.
And then the final section is Windrush Child,
Okay.
which brings together all the poems that deal with the experience of leaving the Caribbean for a new life.
Wow.
So, you know, those 5 sections provide a really lovely kind of journey through different aspects
Yeah, it's good structure.
of Caribbean life.
And in each section,
Yes.
there are introductory poems by John Agard and Grace Nichols.
That's right. Yeah, so it's like they're
That's cool.
guiding you through each of those sections.
I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And they're wonderful poets. I mean,
Yeah.
both John Agard and Grace
So
Nichols.
there were a lot of different types of poems in here too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's rhyming poems, there's free verse poems, there's poems that use proverbs.
Yeah.
And what's really nice is the way they use the Caribbean dialect in a
Right.
lot of the poems,
Yeah.
which gives a really authentic voice and actually just sounds
Yeah.
beautiful when you read it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the big themes that came through in the poems.
Yeah.
So the beauty of nature was one that our sources really focused on.
Yeah.
And this is all about like the landscapes and the sea and
Mm-hmm.
even like weather,
Yes.
like that, some about hurricanes and some about like hot sunny days.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool how they brought to life all of those things.
It's that real sense of vibrancy, isn't it, that you
Yeah.
get from the Caribbean?
And then another theme is family and community.
Yeah.
And this was really brought to life in that poem Guidance,
Mm-hmm.
which was all about that proper uncle.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a really good example of that.
Yes, you get a real sense of those close-knit
Yeah.
family relationships
Yeah.
and that sense of community as
Yeah.
well.
And then another theme that the sources highlighted was delicious food.
Ah.
So we
Yeah.
talk about like prickly pineapples
Yeah.
and coconut water
Mm-hmm.
and different things that you would find in the Caribbean.
And it just makes your mouth water, doesn't it, when
Yeah.
you read those descriptions?
Yeah.
Makes you want to
Makes you want to go there.
pop on a plane and go straight there.
Yeah. And then another one is Caribbean culture and traditions.
Yeah.
So this could be music
Mm-hmm.
or stories
Yes.
or just like ways of life.
And it's captured so well, I think, through the use of language.
Yeah.
The way they use the dialect
Yes.
really brings that
Right.
culture to life.
And then another big theme was journeys and leaving home.
Yes.
And this was really reflected in that poem, Windrush Child,
That's right. Yeah.
which I thought was really powerful.
In a theme that resonates with so many people
Yeah.
worldwide.
And then the sources also touched on a little bit of Caribbean history and colonialism.
Yes, it's there.
Okay.
It's in the background. It's
Yeah.
not the main focus of the poems, but
Yeah.
it's certainly something that informs the writing.
So if somebody really enjoys this poetry collection,
Mm-hmm.
where do you recommend they go next?
Well, there's another collection called "Give the Ball to the Poet,"
Okay.
which is full of really wonderful Caribbean writing.
Okay.
And then there's a companion book to "Under the Moon and Over the Sea"
Okay.
called "A Caribbean Dozen: Poems from Caribbean Poets,"
Oh, cool.
which is also put together by John Agard and Grace Nichols.
Okay.
So that's definitely worth a look.
Awesome.
And then, there are lots of poets
Yeah.
who write in a very playful way.
Yeah.
So people like Michael Rosen, Roger McGough,
Yeah.
they might appeal to
Yeah.
people who've enjoyed this book. And then,
Yeah.
of course, there's lots of other
Mhm.
poetry books out there that
Yeah.
celebrate all sorts of different cultures and voices.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of kind of exploring and finding
Yeah.
what you enjoy.
And also maybe checking out more poetry by John Agard and Grace Nichols themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got fantastic collections.
So let's talk about John Agard for a minute.
Yes,
So he was born in Guyana,
that's right.
which is in the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
and he moved to Britain in 1977.
Yes,
So before he was a poet, he actually worked as a journalist.
yes.
So he has always had a strong connection to words.
Yeah.
And a lot of his poems explore his own experiences of moving,
Mm-hmm.
as well as like Caribbean culture and history.
Yes.
He actually won a really big award called the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry.
He did, yes.
Yeah?
Pretty prestigious. And he's known for his performances as well.
Oh, wow.
He's a very
Right.
engaging performer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we said, he collaborated with Grace Nichols on this book.
Yes, a wonderful partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he really started writing for children when he was visiting schools.
That's right.
And he saw how much they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So the sources actually put together like a little table
Mm-hmm.
of key facts about John Agard.
Yes.
I thought that was a really good summary.
Yeah. It is a really good summary. It kind of sums up
Yeah.
his life and work very nicely.
So he was born in Guyana.
Yes.
He moved to Britain.
Mm-hmm.
He's written poetry plays and children's books.
Yes. Very versatile
Yeah.
writer.
And his work is all about Caribbean culture
Mhm.
and experiences of migrating.
Yeah.
And he won the Queen's Gold Medal.
Yeah.
And he worked with Grace Nichols,
Mm-hmm.
and he was inspired by children.
Yes.
There you go.
That sums him up pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, this book, Under the Moon and Over the Sea,
Yeah.
is like a really special book
It is.
because it gives you this like really vibrant window
Mm.
into the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And it lets you kind of experience the sights
Yes.
and the sounds and the tastes
And the story.
and the stories in a way that is really educational and fun.
Absolutely. And it's accessible, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
difficult read.
Yeah. And really explores these important themes.
Yeah.
Like nature and family and food and culture and journeys.
Yes. All the key ingredients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really cool how they use all these different types of poems.
Yes.
And they include Caribbean dialect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And John Agard has such a rich background.
Yes. Fascinating life and career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we finish up here,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about how poetry can be such a powerful way to understand
Yeah.
different cultures. And I wonder if maybe our listeners will be inspired to find some poetry about different parts of the world. Or maybe poetry about like journeys or new beginnings.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that would be fantastic.
yeah.
I think that would be a wonderful thing to come out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because poetry really does give you that
Yes.
insight
Yes.
into other worlds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, this has been a great deep dive.
It has?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope you guys enjoyed listening.
Thanks for joining us.